But when it was all happening, police was there.
Letting it happen.
Yeah, letting it happen.
On Twitter, right?
Yes.
Like you could see it on Twitter.
And that was something that,
Right.
of course, from police perspective, it's like, we cannot control this mob. How can we?
Right.
But standing still, what's your why you exist then?
Islam will continue to be triumphant until there have been 12 Khulafa, all of them from Al-Quraysh.
The God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever.
This is my brother, my executor, and my successor among you, so listen to him and obey.
My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting.
Whoso obeys me obeys God. Whoever disobeys me disobeys God. Whoever disobeys my commander disobeys me.
The Lord said to me, You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession.
Two systems of government, two visions for life on earth. Whichever is true changes everything. This is Christ and Khulafa.
Alright, welcome back to Christ and Caliphate. Today we are talking about everything that's been going on in Pakistan with the Pakistani Christians. So, Gio, update us here. Give us the lowdown on what's going on here.
Well, actually, it's pretty sad and pretty bad, I would say, to see what's going on in Pakistan. I just want to give you a backdrop of it, what actually happened and what allegedly happened, not actually, what reports are coming. One Christian burned the Quran, right? And that triggered the whole town. And what they did in retaliation, they burned down the 4 churches or 5 churches, and also the homes and houses of the Christian community living in that particular area. This is just one specific area. The riots did not go like above and beyond throughout the country. It was just confined to one city, but there were like lots of Christian minority living there, and what they did is just burn down whole 5-6 churches.
Right.
But the thing is, the allegation of burning Quran is still to be proven.
Right.
It's not clear that he actually did so. If even he did, there is a penalty by the court. You still don't have the right to go and just, plunge in, kind of like burn down the churches and burn down the minorities and stuff. So for me, it was really, really heartbreaking and kind of like I was sad and I was worried, and I was like, where this all is going. On one side, when we talk about Muslims in Pakistan, when they see something in West, it's like, oh, Muslims are not treated right. Muslims are not given the equal rights. If you burn down a mosque somewhere in United States or any Western country, right? There is a big protest going on in Pakistan, going in all Muslim countries, right? They will stand up against it. But what I see as a hypocrisy in most of the Pakistani Muslims, to be particular, because I am from Pakistan, right? So I will just represent that. There was no such... I'm not saying there was no kind of there was no consideration. Like politicians went to score their political things, show their solidarity that we are with you, we are here to support you and stuff. But when it was all happening, police was there.
Letting it happen.
Yeah, letting it happen.
On Twitter, right?
Yes.
Like you could see it on Twitter.
And that was something that, of course, from police perspective, it's like, we cannot control this mob. How can we?
Right.
But standing still, what's your why you exist then? What is the reason of having a police at first place? So yeah, that's something that I still kind of like healing through.
Sure.
Just I want to have people to have a neutral view. If you want to take a side of like Muslims in the West, the rights of theirs, then you have to speak about the rights of minorities in your own country. That's my take on it.
Sure.
So, we got an email this week from somebody who knows a Christian living in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And this Christian living in Pakistan, like a Pakistani Christian, is scared after this, and they're freaked out, and they they're trying to get out of the country. They're trying to figure out how do I be safe? Like overall in Pakistan, what is the situation of Christians? What does it? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? What's the deal with being a Christian in Pakistan?
I would say the amount of radicalization that society is bringing now, it's getting worse and worse every passing day. But on the contrary, there is enough people who are liberal in their approach and who accept those people as Pakistanis. To put the facts in front of you guys, Pakistan does not recognize minorities as equal. Like a Christian cannot be a president of Pakistan, cannot be a prime minister of Pakistan. So they're already second-class citizens in Pakistan. They don't have those rights, which is also a thing, which bothers me a lot personally. If you're a citizen of that country, the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, said clearly in his words that this is a free state for everybody.
Right.
And that's where a liberal or an open-minded Pakistani would see, and there's a lot of people like that,
Yeah.
But with the whole timeline that how it is traveling, there is more radical Islam is being built around those specific areas where those Christians living. I'm talking about Karachi. Yeah, Christians are safe there. If I talk about Lahore or Islamabad, I think Christians can live and exist in peace, and if they do not trigger certain things, I don't think they're living under certain level of threat that their existence is in challenge. But yeah,
I actually saw an interesting article that came from, I saw it on Twitter, that the secret police there are looking into the allegation that India did it, that this was provoked by India, and that, right? So, is it true? Isn't it true? I'd like to think it's not true. The thing that I think that's probably more accurate is we just saw law and order breakdown in our country, and we have to put on a face that it's somebody else's fault, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't want to blame ourselves. We don't want to find like the fall guy in our own societal weaknesses. We want to find him in India's.
yes. So
Yeah.
this goes back like this. Anything happens in India, ISI is blamed for it.
Right.
And anything now happens in Pakistan, RAW is blamed for that. Is Indian intelligence agency.
Right, right.
It goes back and forth.
It's a chain, right? And anything Muslim extremists are doing in Afghanistan is ISI's fault. Anything Muslim extremists are doing in Pakistan is India's fault.
Right.
Right.
So
Right.
It's always some other government that's
to blame,
Yeah.
nobody's there to take responsibility. And that's where the core of the problem is. Until I met many Afghanis, right? And they put all the blame of their failed state on Pakistan, ISI, foreign invasions and this and that. They're not there to take their responsibility on their shoulders.
I have heard that many times. Yeah.
Right? And that is also the problem in Pakistan. Until you do not take responsibility of your problem, if you do not address your problems, there is no way you can find a
I
solution.
would say also that's a Western value. It's very much actually kind of goes back, personal responsibility goes back to like Europe, like post Dark Ages European thinking, right? Like, so I can't like John Locke and some of these other philosophers, all wrote about this idea that it's you are responsible for what you do. It's a decentralization away from the state, right? It's away from like state control. It's back to the individual, which the Bible clearly does, right? Like the Bible clearly points at the individual and says these people are responsible for their actions.
So here's something I want to get into here. So I think a lot of Christians in the West, just like the movie we watched in the last episode or the next episode, depending on when we release these.
That's right. On the next episode.
Yeah, on the next episode. Yeah, so I think generally the way the average Christian in the West probably thinks about like Islam is that it goes in and basically forces everyone to be Muslims. No Christians allowed, no Jews allowed, no nothing. Like, how true is that? Is there a straight line from the Islamic sources to exactly what's happening in Pakistan? Is there no connection, or is it a kind of jagged, complicated line?
The answer is yes and no at the same time. It depends totally on you, how you want to see, how you want to take Islam. There is enough sources available if you want to take the conservative route. Conservative mean the extreme route, right? There is a hadith that says, expel all the non-believers out of the Arabian Peninsula, right? That's a Sahih hadith. What does it mean? It means throw all Jews, Christians, Hindus, and whatever pagans, throw them out of the Arabian Peninsula. That is evident enough
And also,
that
probably is a blueprint for the rest of the
Right.
Islamic world. Right.
But at the same time, there are so many examples where Muhammad kind of like expressed that you have to live peacefully, and if somebody surrenders to you, you take the taxes, they pay you alms, just let them stay. And like in the time of Umar, we saw that.
Right.
In the time of Saladin, we saw that.
Yeah.
Right.
There are so many
right.
examples.
Well, I mean, that's the impact of history, right? Like it doesn't exist in a bubble.
Yeah.
There's definitely times in Islamic history where, like Ferdinand Isabella kicked all the Jews out of Spain and the Ottoman Empire took them in, right? Like that's a clear correlation of what you're talking about.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it just goes both sides.
So there's
I think there's no such thing as a clear line. I don't think that I think all lines, particularly when it comes to things that are this heavy. Oh, did we lose it? Things that are this heavy, right, are always jagged. I think that there are some things in the texts that clearly point to consequences for desecrating, Islam. But I also feel like, would that be there if there wasn't thousands of years of history and wars between Muslims and Christians, right?
And I would also say, no matter how you slice the Islamic texts, there's no like license for mob violence. Right. That's something.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like
Right.
because you were mentioning the connection, the Christian in Pakistan who is like thinking he doesn't want to, he's afraid to be there. Is it really because of Islam, or is it because of just mob mentality and just human sin?
I think
It just doesn't-
I think the answer is yes, though,
Yeah.
because I think Pakistan just generally is one of the hardest places in the world to be a Christian.
Because of, right, but is it because of what? Why is it exactly? Is it really just? Can you just say, oh, it's
Well,
because
again,
of Islam? You can't
nothing
really say
is a
that.
clear line, right? In my mind, I mean, I think that the answer to your question is yes. It's all of those things, because it's because you're a Christian. It's because of mob mentality. It's because of political factors. It's because of like it's India's fault, right? Like it's a lot of different things, but it's also kick the dog, right? Do you know what kick the dog is? It's that comic where the dad gets mad at the mom, right? And then the mom turns around and gets mad at the daughter, and the daughter gets mad at her little brother, and the little brother has nobody to turn to, so he kicks the dog, right? And a lot of times, just throughout history, Christians have been that, right? Like Nero did it, in early Rome, early Christian
Yeah.
history. It's their fault, guys. Like the fault of the problems are theirs. They're seditious. They believe something we don't believe. They've got to be up to no good, right? They've got to be trying to be subversive. They're trying to undo Roman culture, right? They're trying to undo our values. They're trying to be this thing that, and of course, like as Christians, I mean, we're commanded to spread the gospel. And because I believe in the gospel, right? Because I believe in the good news, I want to share it. But, that will put you in a position of being like in a secular society, an Islamic society, or any of these situations.
The allegations here are weird, though. It's like they attacked the Quran, which
Well, I mean,
would not be like if that's true, which I doubt it's true, but if it's true, like that's not a
Christian
principle
values,
at all.
right?
You won't find it anywhere in the Bible. So
Well,
it's either a lie to like you said, beat the dog, or like
Or a person is mentally unstable. That is also floating. That's what I saw on the Twitter as well. That his mental ability, he was unstable,
Right.
and he was to be taken somewhere for medical
I
treatment.
didn't know that. Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
and
they
that's.
burned the Quran.
I think so. I'm not
Something
sure.
like that?
So
I mean,
let's-
nobody's sure. That's the point.
Yeah.
Again,
right?
let's steel man the guy, right? Let's say he's tired of being a second class citizen. He is has lots of things he doesn't like about Islam, and is just sort of, tired of being trodden on, and he's like, all right, I'm going to show these Muslims by burning this book. Right? Let's say that's the scenario.
And he must be having balls of steel for that, because in Pakistan, you know that if it is landing you in hot waters if you do that type of thing. It's
Well, I mean, think about it. Not to cut you off, but monks set themselves on fire in the 70s, right? It's like the Rage Against the Machine album cover, in the 90s, right? This is people setting themselves on fire with gasoline because they're mad at the world, but they use themselves as a sacrifice. I mean, I guess in your scenario, the guy's mad at what he feels like is oppressing him, so he sets it on fire.
So let's dig into this, because in Acts chapter 18, there's a riot in the city of Ephesus, and Paul and Barnabas are dragged in front of they're not dragged in front of the mob, sorry, a mob assembles because they're preaching there's one God, and the mob worships the goddess Artemis of the Ephesians, and the people who make the idols come and try and stop the preaching, and because they're saying gods that are made with human hands are not gods. So at that point, the town clerk, who's not a Christian, who's one of the Ephesians, gets up and says, look, you brought these men here today who are neither sacrilegious nor blasphemers of our goddess. So why are you here? If you have a complaint, take it up with the legal authorities. Otherwise, go home. So I think it's really, really important for us as Christians to imitate the example of the apostles, even when circumstances are difficult. Like we shouldn't unnecessarily insult other people's religions just because we're oppressed or the situation is bad. We should imitate God's standards, not be reactionary to these things. And like when you get reactionary, there becomes this entire awful cycle of the kind of things that are happening in Pakistan.
right. And I think I would blame Christians a bit here.
Okay, let's get into this. Let's hear this out.
Actually, what most of let me put it this way. For let's say tonight everybody turns into Christians, or Christian numbers grow bigger than in the Muslim population in Pakistan. Would that solve the problems in Pakistan? Absolutely not. Because they're the same people. Their mentality is same. They're also mobsters. They also do all those things. That there is no difference. It's just the religion that choose differently.
Oh.
The mentality is still the same. Then if we give charge to Christians are a majority, then Muslims are minority and they're living under persecution. Maybe things will look a little different than what it's looking now. But I think there is no difference between the mentality. And one more thing that I would like to point out about Pakistani Christians, they're looking towards West to come and rescue them. They're not considering Pakistan as their home. They're not considering that Pakistan as their land, that they should be contributing towards making it better for them or making it better for everybody. They're like, I heard a lot of text. You get a lot of text. Everybody gets a lot of text. It's about like, come and rescue us from this place. We are living under persecution. We are living so terrible life here. So come and rescue us. We want to go out of this country. Not on whoever is going in Pakistan. These are like Western people going and sharing the gospel, right? And the people who are born and raised Christians in Pakistan, I'm not saying everybody is like that, but most of them are want to leave Pakistan, don't want to stay here, don't want to contribute in anything. And that's something I think is more problematic than anything else there.
What do you think the Bible's response to that individual would be?
I mean, of course, Bible says that you have to kind of like sojourn the place. You have the place you're living in is your place. You have to contribute towards making it better, not just fleeing it. Of course, when you want to flee because of persecution and there is threat to your life, of course you have the right to flee. Not saying, but there is enough majority where you can all come together, and start making things better for yourself. That's my approach, basically, is.
Yeah, what Jeremiah 17 says, love the city that I've sent you into exile in, for in its welfare you will find your welfare.
Mm-hmm.
I would also play like devil's advocate, though. The believers fled all the time persecution. Like early believers, they fled Rome, they fled all over the place, and that's how the gospel was spread. Right, particularly after the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, right? So I hear both perspectives. I just think it's really hard as the persecuted person to sit there and say, well, I mean, I would want to leave, right?
Okay.
I would.
Let's break it down.
I would not want my children to grow up there. I would want to leave. So.
And he did say that everyone has the right to flee.
Yeah.
However,
I totally hear you, though. I get it.
Some people everyone has the right to flee, and some people should stay,
right,
as well, right?
Yeah.
Some people should stay and build. So here's a question. So Jesus says, if they persecute in one town, flee to the next. That's a completely legitimate course of action for a Christian. You don't just have to stay still and die.
Right.
The question I have, though, is what is the objective danger of people in Pakistan? Do people need to flee the country to be safe, or could they just move cities?
I think it depends on you in particular. For example, you're living in a society or community where there is conservative Muslims or radical Muslims. Yeah, you should not stay with them. But since you existed alongside them for years, since independence, the town I grew up next to that in the next city, Abbottabad, there were 4 or 5 churches, and they were old to the time of Britishers when they were there, right? Mm-hmm. And those people are Christians by generations. They're not there is a different segment. When you convert to Christianity is different than when you're born Christian. Those are 2 completely different things, right? And yeah, people look down upon you. They will shout some slurs upon you. Yes, these are all things that are genuinely there. But most of the time, what they do is they don't choose to study. It's equivalent how we see the black community suffering here. They don't go to school. Instead, they choose the different path, and that path leads to something else. And that's how, you will find most of the Christians in doing illegal activities like selling alcohol, which is not allowed in Pakistan, right? But every business of alcohol, illegal business, is owned and run by Christians. So it is really okay. Now you will be saying it is not haram in Christianity. What is the point of it? It's why they are not in a good position, why they're not doing good jobs. First, they don't have an infrastructure, right? They don't send their kids to school because they want their kids to go and bring money from the day one to their house because they're poor, right? So the whole structure itself is not stable enough. And coming back to the point of fleeing, they can go to the cities, big cities, like Islamabad, to say. I think Islamabad is one of the most liberal places you can live. You know, Lahore, not all parts of Lahore, but there are good parts of Lahore where you can stay. The Karachi, you know. I'm not talking about the small towns of Pakistan. Yeah, there is kind of like conservativeness. There is, so for example, say, if a Christian person says, Sharjeel, look, I want to come and live in your town, I would say, please don't do that. Please do not do that. Because my people will not accept you. Right? So,
I mean, from a Christian perspective, that would be the need to go, though. Like,
Well, and this is it, right? So there's freedom there, and there's also built into Christian expectations is one of persecution and suffering sometimes. What it sounds like you're describing to me is kind of like a feedback loop. They're not accepted in society, so they check out of society, build their own kind of illicit underground society, and don't fight to be a part of society by like raising their condition, becoming educated, and participating in society.
Because there isn't anything in like the government of Pakistan or whatever that like.
I mean,
it's like they don't have to sell alcohol if that's not legal, and they don't have to do. I don't know. Like they don't. It doesn't seem like it. They would be. It would be something too detrimental to their well-being as a Christian. Like
well,
they could easily abide by the laws and
think
like
about it. You know, like you
still maintain their faith.
If you tell people you're a Christian in those places, can you get a job?
it's a very good question.
Or can I just add one other thing? Because you said education, right? Is if you tell your kids to go to school and they tell their classmates and their teachers that they're Christians, what happens to them in those areas?
That I would say depends on the area at first.
Right.
So
let's pick a
What
hypothetical.
about Islamabad, where like
Islamabad is a beautiful place to live. Even in, I know many schools, and on top of that, a lot of Westerners, like mission schools, are there for Christian people, particularly. You know, they have. I think I'm not disregarding that fact that they're not facing difficulties in getting education, but if they want to take that journey, the road that will make them successful in their life, you know, they can take it, but they find many reasons not to take that.
Yeah, I mean everyone. My point is, it's if you have the means to leave, right, versus the means to stay.
Right.
Okay, so there's the means to stay and there's the means to
Leave.
And you know, if your experience in staying is going to put you in a position where you're in a feedback loop, I totally understand the desire to leave, right? Because the whole thing seems hopeless. You know, it's been like this for generations, and look at us, we're selling alcohol, right? I mean, that's the other side of it. I don't know. Maybe that's well, anyway, the point is, I think it's easy to say to people like, you know, hey, Ethiopians, you're starving. Why don't you just leave? You know, why don't you just go to like Addis, get out of the countryside and go to Addis Ababa and don't starve anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Or, you know, why don't you go to, you know, you're Somali and you're being persecuted. Why don't you just get out of there? And I think I don't think it's ever that easy. Mm-mm. I think this is why everything is a jagged line, right? Like I don't think that there are like clear solutions to situations like this because there's not religious and political freedom, right? Or maybe there is at some level, but it doesn't apply to everybody. Like you just said yourself, that like there cannot be a Pakistani Christian president, and I would say like those are Pakistani blasphemy laws are some of them
insane.
They're insane laws,
yes.
Right? So if it reminds me a lot of Iran. You know what I'm saying? Like I say I'm a Christian to you, I have to tell you in private, right? I can't do anything evangelical. Like I can't, you know, if I start talking to my coworkers about this, I'll lose my job, I'll lose my house, I'll, you know, And I'm not saying that's the situation in Pakistan. I am saying that among every Christian that I've talked to that has come out of a persecuted environment, right, that stayed as long as they could until they couldn't anymore, okay, that they're very glad that they're out.
Yeah, of
And,
course.
you know, I want to see a day when Christians everywhere are able to express themselves.
Yeah.
I just think that it's like the word you're looking for, I think, is bravery, right?
Right.
You're
that's
looking
missing.
for a brave, united front
Front.
among Christians to be able to stand up and say, no, we are people.
Yeah.
We deserve to be accepted. We're
This is our
traditionally
land too.
accepted. Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a bravery that needs to be displayed.
Right, exactly.
And I'm saying that the system has put them in a position where they have to be cowards
Right.
to survive.
And also, I think this is endemic of global Christianity as a whole right now. That we're looking for sort of end times messianic solutions to problems, rather than small, boring, sacrificial steps
Right.
in the real world.
Right.
So, whenever American politics is getting bad, Christians don't think, okay, we should really train more kids in law and encourage our kids to get into politics and make a gradual difference in the system. We think, oh well, rapture's going to happen. We're getting out of here soon anyway.
Oh gosh.
Run and hide, right?
Right. And that's coming from a lot of pulpits.
Yeah,
Right,
It-
yeah.
it- like that's a lot. Like that's a problem in global Christianity
Right.
now.
Right.
But the reason, so America, I think, becomes like that for some Pakistani Christians. Is like, okay, well, yeah, going to the West is that's freedom, which it is, right? If they come to Seattle, they'll have a very different life than they do in Pakistan.
Sure.
Sometimes for the best, sometimes for the worst. But they'll certainly be freer in some ways. But that didn't happen by Christians in the West waiting around for messianic solutions.
Right.
The West happened because Christians made sacrifices,
Yep.
they built things,
Yep.
they applied their faith, they applied the Bible to the world around them, and made gradual things, trusting God to show up, not expecting God to just kind of come and like
Change over.
change everything all at once.
I'd like to have a podcast where we can hear about these these Christians that were in all these occupations.
Well, I
And their
think
stories.
maybe it'd be interesting to do it in terms of like where it's happened in Islamic areas, right? Places where Christianity has spread in a primarily Islamic area, and examples of what you're talking about. Because I think
Well, one just to close there because we gotta roll, but one of the best places to be a Christian in the Muslim world is the UAE.
yeah,
I mean, not if you're like a worker in a factory or something, but I mean,
I'm not sure that's a good thing for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not religious. That's not a religious thing.
Religious, right?
Or China, right?
So generally, the UAE has allowed Christians to build churches there, has allowed them to live freely there, right? I have, an Afghan Christian friend who freely lived in Dubai, even as an ex-Muslim. He was able to live freely in Dubai.
Okay.
And where does a lot of that comes from? There's a hospital called Oasis Hospital in Al Ain, which was a hospital built by Christians to serve the UAE.
Right.
And it became the best hospital in the whole country. And guess where every single emir of the United Arab Emirates was born? In Oasis Hospital in Al Ain.
Right.
So through doing something practical for the country around them, right? The country is not even their country, but they built something good, and they built favor and friendship with the leaders of the country. And now, surprise, surprise, UAE is a relatively good place to be a Christian
Yep.
in the world, and you have to
Can't argue with that.
you have to see to some extent that that's because Christians didn't take this, they're Muslims, they hate us, it's inevitable that we're going to have enmity. They actually made the positive contribution to the lives of Muslims, and that's what we have to do as Christians.
Right.
Like, we don't, even if we see Muslims as our enemy, what do we have to do to our enemies?
Right. Love them. Right.
Love your enemies, pray for
Yeah.
those who persecute you.
Yep.
And so, maybe a Pakistani should get out of Pakistan if they're a Christian. Until that happens, they're called to love their enemies,
Sure.
as we all are.
Yeah, and on last note, what I want to see as a Pakistani in Pakistan, I want to see a place where Christians and Muslims and Jews, and doesn't matter what your faith is, you're given equal rights. You have equal rights to apply for the jobs, for education. Your social presence in society is there, and for that you by yourself has to take certain steps. Right? It doesn't fall off the sky. Right? You have. I agree with your point. The way you say there is a lack of bravery, and I agree to that point. They have lived under this persecution for so long that the cowardness has become part of their genes. They're not speaking for themselves.
Right.
That's
There are millions of Israelites in Egypt, and then they're all converted into slaves, right? I mean, it's just, and then 400 years later, they're still slaves. It's like they multiplied and multiplied and multiplied and multiplied. At some point, you think, let's just grab a sword, right? But the whole time you see them leaving Egypt, and afterward they have that mentality, right?
Right.
Like that we're still slaves, We're still slave mentality. So.
So at some point, that mentality has to change,
Right.
and someone has to be
Somebody has
brave
to be there.
first.
Yeah, well, maybe a good prayer is Pakistan and every other situation like Pakistan needs a Moses, right? They have to have a leader, someone like that who fears God and is obedient to the Lord and can lead people effectively and can hear from the Holy Spirit, like clearly enough to have the wisdom and the strategy to be able to do that. I mean, think about Moses, like he just talked to the most powerful leader in the world who thought he was a god, right? Or maybe Esther, right? Maybe Esther's better. Maybe Esther's like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to be brave no matter what, even if it costs me my life.
Well, that's a good note to end on. Let's be praying for that man.
Yeah.